Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, everybody. So, I thought it would be good this week to go over some of the things we've gone over in the last few months. We've gained a lot of new listeners here on Gold Country, and I really appreciate everybody who has joined the wonderful community on this radio station. In my show, we talk about fishing, obviously. And yes, I do call it Terrible at Fishing because it actually spawned from my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing. So I started that channel when I was paralyzed. So I was really terrible at fishing. But first off, I'd like to give thoughts to all those people in the hurricane areas, in Florida, in North Carolina, in those parts of the country that have been hit really, really hard. Our thoughts, our prayers, everything goes out to all of those people there. And hopefully they can pick up the pieces and get life back to a rhythm again. So I know I've lost a few friends over there and in North Carolina. And I hope that you are not affected in a personal way. Although all those people over there, please, even all of us here on the West Coast, are thinking about you. All right, let's get back to fishing. Something a little bit more cheery. So, we're going to talk a little bit about presentation. Now, what is presentation? Presentation is how we present a bait or a lure or a fly or whatever it may be to the fish in a way that is attractive to the fish. So I do have a best-selling book. It's called Terrible at Fishing Instruction Manual for Freshwater Fishing. That's it. And so we're going to sort of dive into the book a little bit, and if you buy it, great. You can email me and I'll send you a signed copy, or just go on Amazon and get it. But under presentation, when you present the bait to a fish, it's very, very important. One of the most fun videos I did on my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing, was on this subject. You usually must edit in a good moment. But while I was talking and casting the lure, letting it sink to a different depth, and then changing the retrieve speed, a largemouth bass hit it. Changing depth, pace, and action allows you to work a spot more thoroughly and get what you want of fish. Now, that is true every single time. A person next to you may catch nothing, but you might catch a lot, or vice versa. Drives you nuts. And there's a reason for that. It's changing the depth, the pace, and the action of the lure that actually gets the fish to bite. So, playing your bait or lure takes practice. And a good rod does help a lot for you to do this reliably. I catch a lot of fish, but I have good gear. A flick of my wrist and a slight tug on my rod causes my bait to change in direction, jump or hop. This little bit of action upon retrieving causes my bait to look injured, and it catches a predator's attention. Playing with the retrieve is fun, and as you start getting results, your muscle memory kicks in, and you will have a lot of success when others may be frustrated. So let's talk about some common fishing techniques and methods. Let's start with the basic. How to put a worm on a hook. I know. I enjoy two ways, but the hook, I put the hook through the fat part of the worm. This keeps the worm moving, attracting more fish, but the drawback is that the fish get to eat it gradually. They like to nitpick it. So threading the hook through the body of the worm works well too. It keeps the worm on the hook, and the fish cannot help but get So let's talk about bobbers. The fishing bobber is a tradition of fishing because it's an effective way to fish. White side up if it's a white and red one, so you can see it clearly in the water. Use a small bobber, one that can just stay afloat. Too large a bobber will hide bites from you. Smaller bobbers will submerge when lightly struck. It's very, very important. So weight is necessary, but the wrong weight is counterproductive. So think about weight being a hindrance between you and the feel of the bite. You want to put the weight below the hook. Does that make sense to you? Put the weight below the hook. Now, the reason you do it because you want any kind of bite that on that hook to be felt. Weight restricts that feel. It cushions it. Also, if you put a weight above the hook, make sure that it's far above the hook and that it's a slide weight. We use, bobber stoppers. Some call it a bobber stopper. And we put that on our line in order to keep the weight from sliding down to the hook. So if you use a slide hook, something that slides on the line, is not crimped or tied to the line, if you do that, you'll actually feel more bites on the hook. So that's really important. Now, when it comes to bottom fishing, where you would put the weight far forward, maybe 2-3 feet above it, and it's a slide weight, and you're going to run that worm or power bait on the hook. You're going to run that farther down. So you're going to keep that weight far from your hook. If you use power bait, it'll float. It'll float above the weed line. This is a very, very effective method for fishing. But try never to put a weight on the line, crimped on the line, between you and the hook. You want to put it below the hook. You just want to put it below the hook. You want to feel every little bite. It's amazing how much power bait people lose that the fish eat, okay? And they never felt that fish nibbling on their hook. It's because they put the weight on the line. So either a slide weight, I call a bullet weight, torpedo weight, something like that, or put it below the hook. It's very important, guys. It's very important. Now, tackle boxes. I know, tackle boxes. I have a lot of tackle boxes. A common tackle box nowadays is a plain old box. It's a plastic box with lots of different cubbies that you can rearrange and do stuff like that. I use a lot of them. Now, why? Because I'm a bass fisherman, and each box has a methodology. I have a terminal tackle box that's got my hooks, my weights, my bobber stoppers, my barrel swivels. All that stuff is in one box. So that's my tackle box. That's always going to go with me everywhere I go. Do I need that much? No. But keeps it separate. And then I have a box for different techniques. Or different fish. So I have a trout box. So my trout box is, it's got my spinners on it. It's got my power bait in it, things like that. So my trout box has got lots of different sizes for different weights in order to do different presentations. My crappie box has got tiny little jigs in it. Lots of them. Okay. I have an ice fishing box for ice fishing season. It's a little box. But it's got the littlest, smallest, lightest things that you'll ever see. 1/80th of an ounce jigs in there. And it works so well. And then I got all my bass boxes. Oh, yes, I got bass boxes. I've got the top water, I've got my top water box, my shallow diver, my mid divers, my deep divers, my swim baits, it's just amazing, all the different boxes. And what do I take out there? Well, it depends on water temperature and the target species that I want. And so this is a lot. When I'm out there, I get kind of lazy. I'll just have a daily box where I'll unhook something, throw it in the daily box, and then put something else on. And then at the end of the day, I'll take my daily box and resort it in all my other boxes. And this way it keeps my boxes organized. Also, make sure that you clean everything up. Now, one thing about, bait and for lures is something that almost all fishermen, most fishermen neglect. And that's hooks. Quality of hooks. You've heard me talk about this before, those who've been listening for a while. And quality of hooks is very important. The hook is, your linchpin, basically. It's going to get you success or not success when a fish takes interest in what you've got in the water. So it's real important to put quality hooks on your lures or on your line. Don't go cheap on this. You don't have to go expensive, although I'd go pretty expensive. But there are certain brands of hooks that you want to really, keep in mind. I use Gamakatsu hooks. I know it sounds really weird, but Gamakatsu makes an extremely sharp hook. And so does Owner. And you can remember the word Owner. Owner hooks are really good as well. Other brands like Eagle Claw, VMC, they can make a good hook, but they're just not as consistent in their hook sharpness. One thing, too, about hooks. Hooks dull. They just dull. And I keep with me a hook sharpener in order to deburr my hooks. And so, how can you tell if a hook is sharp? Well, this sounds kind of weird, but a sharp hook will stick into your skin really, really easily. Real easily. My $4 hooks, are on my big giant baits. I put hook covers on them because they can easily impale my skin. So what I'll do when I'm shopping for hooks is that I'll put them. I'll see if I can catch the first layer or two of my skin easily, without blood, of course, because I bleed like crazy. I have blood thinners. So I try to hook my skin just the first layer or two. And if it can do that, I've got a very, very good hook. If it doesn't do that, and I like the bait, I like the lure it's on, I'll buy the lure and put a Gamakatsu or an Owner hook on it. And then, every winter, I go through my baits. Now, some of them I didn't use at all. Most of them I probably didn't use at all because I have 1,000 baits. But there are some favorites that I use all the time. And I will go through them and either see if I can sharpen them, get them back up to point, or I'll remove the hook and put a brand new hook on it. And maintaining the sharpness of hooks is very, very important. It is the section of, my book where I talk about this really well. So keep a sharp hook, use sharp hooks, and see what a big difference that makes at landing a fish. So I want you to stay tuned for my next segment because we're going to go dive farther into my book. And we're going to talk about not only how to catch different species and target them, but we're going to talk also about the seasons that we're in. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, everybody. We're going to talk about understanding fish in this segment. And understanding fish, or the behavior of the fish, you're trying to catch is a crucial part of fishing. How else are you going to attract it to your line if you don't know what it finds attractive? That's real important. Some fish are bait fish. They will eat a worm on a hook faster than a moving lure. Or think about catfish. Something, stinky, liver or whatever on a hook. That's what certain fish they like. Some react by striking, moving lures or something that they find appealing. So as a striking fish, is out there and you're targeting it, you're going to basically be swimming your lure through the water, trying to make it look like it's injured or has signs of weakness. And that will attract those types of fish. And I've told you this over and over and over and over again. Water temperature tells you so much of where and how a fish will react. If you don't have a fish finder, I want you to get a pool thermometer. Really inexpensive. You can probably find them. Well, you can find them at Walmart. And get purchase a pool thermometer, add a nice long line to it, toss it out into the water. By doing that, you're going to read the surface temperature of the water. Warm water fish will be in the upper water column when the water is warm. And the cold water fish will be deeper, and vice versa. So you want to make sure that you understand the water temperature. And a simple purchase of a pool thermometer, it was one of the cheapest things you'll have in your tackle box. And you're going to throw it out there, and you're going to get a lot smarter. At least it'll start you thinking about your strategies. And because of that, you're going to choose the right lure or the wrong one if you don't know it. So it has a direct effect on the eating patterns of the species, whether they're active feeders or lethargic feeders. The difference between working the bait is important. Slow or fast, depending on species and the temperature of the water. In my book, I've actually put some neat illustrations in here. Now, think about ice fishing. Okay, the water's really, really, really cold, right? You're sitting on top of it. So, ice fishing. If you've ever gone ice fishing, you will understand why we use a 24-inch little rod that bends super easily. Because the fish hit in cold water extremely softly, really softly. And you have to be very sensitive. Call it a microaggression on the hook. To use a term that drives me nuts nowadays. And then your rod is going to bend just a little bit. It's really tiny. Cold water creates soft bites. And that's kind of the way it works with a lot of fish. And warm water creates aggressive bites. So your rod has to show sensitivity in colder water, or you have to be more aware that the fish are actually going to be hitting. So warm water, you might get a bite and a bite and runs with it. So pretty obvious. You can actually use, a heavy rod with, fast action, and you can feel it, you can land it, you can have a great time with it. But in cold water, you're going to have to get a moderate fast, something that bends more on your rod, and keep your finger on your line in order to feel, that little itty bitty bite or nibble on it. So there are certain fish that that are warm water fish. Panfish, bluegills, crappies, those fish are warm water fish. The bass. Believe it or not, bass are in the sunfish family. So we have pumpkin seed sunfish. It's the same family of fish as bass, believe it or not. Or bass is the same family as the sunfish. So The smallmouth and largemouth bass are warm water fish. Cold water fish, that's going to be your salmon, your trout, steelhead. These are cold water fish, and they find themselves quite at home in cold water. They actually not only will hit a little softer, but heavier also than warm water fish. Warm water fish will come up into cold water and stay there for a moment just to find food, and then retreat back into the bottom, into the warm water area. So, understanding too that rivers, or not rivers, but lakes, have stratus. They actually have two zones. They got a warm water and a cold water zone. And depending on the time of year, they turn. And there's a barrier in between them, sort of a dead fish zone, dead man zone, demilitarized zone between warm water and cold water. It's called a thermocline. So when we talk about a thermocline, we really don't fish thermoclines typically, because we're going to stay in these water columns that are warm or cold. And twice a year, the lakes turn and they mix, and thermoclines disappear, and everything is in the same water column. It sounds awesome, but it's really hard to catch fish when lakes turn, because they're sharing the water columns. There's lots of natural food available. I mean, bass are eating trout. And, it's just the way it is. It's just turning, and all this food is together, and the fish are having a good old time just eating each other, or whatever. So, but warm water fish in the winter here are at the bottom of the lakes, and they're very lethargic. They don't move at all, because movement requires energy, and energy requires food. And there's not a lot of food in the winter. And so they're very, very lethargic. And they're still in the water. They're still alive. They're still swimming somewhere. But they are very slow. And if you want to catch bass through the ice, you're going to go deep. And you're just going to sit there for a long time and hope for one to hit all day long. It's just the way it works. And hopefully you'll drop a worm right on top of its head, because you got to wake it up. That leads us to the next subject of understanding the bottom of the water columns. Excuse me. Take a drink. Understanding the bottom is very, very important. So what's beneath the water is of high concern for you. So fish are ambush predators, and they like to hide below or in areas like rocks and growth. Most of us with fish finders are looking at topography to understand where the fish like to hide, and we're going to discuss where fish like to hide. So there are two things that immediately get our attention on a fish finder: water temperature, which we already talked about, get a pool thermometer, and the bottom topography of a lake. Now, the beautiful thing, you can get topography of lakes right online nowadays, and you can just, understand it. In fact, even at Lake of the Woods, they have kind of a depth of the topography of the lake, so you can get at least an idea of where the fish are. Do you need a fish finder? No, because you got online to all this stuff. So you could go to nautical charts. Fishermap.org is another really good one. You could get these different maps and see where where you think a good place is to fish. So again, water temperature, topography are very important. Again, when online, when you get these, those maps are contingent on how much water is in the lake. So it assumes a full lake. Well, this year Shasta was full, all right, but in previous years it was half empty. And so the topography's changed quite a bit, but you can still get an idea, all right, of where the the deep areas are and the shallow areas are. The again, the time of year will help you guess at the water temperature if you don't have a pool thermometer. When you get there to the water, if you don't have a water thermometer, put your hand in it and try to guess at the water. Does it feel really cold? All right, well, that obviously is. So you're going to have to get your hand wet. No big deal. If you catch a fish, is the fish cold? Or is it warm? It's amazing. It really is. In warm water, fish come up nice and warm. They live in that water. And in cold water, they come up, really, really cold. So it's simple. It really is very simple. But it requires a little bit of heads up and know-how. So when you look at these topography maps online, you'll find the depth lines will bunch up. That's a drop-off when they bunch up. So drop-offs are really good for fishing. So you want to find these drop-offs because you could go from 6 feet down to 50 feet really, really quick. And because of that, and because fish are ambush predators, they like to sort of migrate in these drop-offs. They also will take these little fish highways, believe it or not. There might be a trench, in the water at the bottom. Fish like to travel on highways. They like to hit these trenches and travel in it because it's a great ambush area. So they could go ahead and travel in this. And there are certain spots, even at Lake of the Woods, that has these little trenches in it. And, Shasta has a lot of them. And it is so predictable. I mean, you could fish Shasta almost as easily as you can Lake of the Woods. It's a very simple lake. I just don't fish Shasta anymore because I don't want to pay $180 for a fishing license. I just don't want to do it. I'll pay my $45 in Oregon. It's just the way it is. Also look at points, points of land. So look for peninsulas. Points are very, very good. It's where the land pushes out into the water. It's the one thing I wish Lake of the Woods had more of, or little fingers that go in. These areas will usually be more active for fishing. So look for those points, those peninsulas. And we usually fish points a lot. So again, another really good way. Look for structures sticking out of the water, like a tree or a rock. Fish enjoy hiding in areas with structure. Casting near the structure and working that area will produce really good results for you. Large flat areas. Now, this is where Lake of the Woods has a really good time of it because they've got 3 very large flat areas that is shallow all the way across. These areas in the summer will produce a lot of vegetation. Well, again, vegetation is a great area for fish to hide and eat. So this is a great way to catch, some fantastic fish. I mean, you can catch a 10-pound bass in 18 inches of water. So just because it's shallow, don't think that there's not a fish there. There are huge fish in very, very shallow areas of water. Docks, it's funny. I will be in bass tournaments once in a while. One time I was at, Shasta Lake in a bass tournament, and I was in my kayak. All the other guys had boats. So they zip out to their favorite spots. Me, I just stick around the docks. There's a lot of fish at the docks. And I could catch my limit, at the docks. So just because you got a fast boat and you can get to another part of the lake, doesn't mean that you're going to catch something really big. They do catch really big fish, but sometimes you boat right past great areas, and docks are really good because it offers cover, and the fish love color. So boat fishing. That brings us to why I have a little boat. Boat fishing is actually advantageous, or being in the water with a kayak, with a float tube, or something like that. The reason we catch a lot of fish from the water rather than the bank is that fish, again, are ambush predators. So if I'm fishing away from the shore, out on the water, I'm casting towards the shore, and my bait is swimming from the shore, shallow areas, into the deep area. Well, again, ambush predators. There's a fish down there waiting for something to come over the top of them. And when it comes over the top of them, they jump up and they hit it. Almost all fish prefer eating upwards. They'll go ahead and eat up. Some fish can't see below them, like panfish. They just can't see below them. So the way their eyes are positioned on their head, they don't have peripheral down below them. So they have to put the bait above them. So I have a 12.5-foot pontoon boat that's inflatable. And if you ever see me out on the water, you will think, wow. Because it's extremely well fitted. It's a Sea Eagle manufactured boat called a Fold Cat 375. And this is one of those boats, when I had a van, I would just deflate, put it in the back of the van, and then, and it fit. And it took me about 15 minutes to inflate it and set it up at the ramp, and off I goes. It fits in the trunk of a car or in the back of a van. Now I have a truck, and I just leave it inflated, and I throw it in the back of the truck. But I got over 10 rod holders on it. I've got my side imaging, in it, fish finder. I've got power to last for days, and a really nice motor. So, and then I've got my tackle center, actually, that I created too. So the boat itself is everything I would ever want in a boat. I mean, it just is. I even have a stand-up bar, which I use sort of as a handicap bar. And it allows me to get in and out of my boat without falling off. I really like that bar. And it also is an accessory bar, too. So if you ever think about, you can go to Facebook or, Marketplace, or just find somebody with a boat that wants to sell it, and probably pick one up for $500. My boat, with all the stuff on it, runs about $3,000 for everything that I have on my boat, not including my rods, because that's different. You could buy a nice rod for a lower price, or you could do what I do. And I use custom made rods, and my tackle gear, my reels and stuff are really, really nice too. So they're good name brands, Abu Garcia, Shimano, stuff like that. So catching a lot of fish is not that hard. It really isn't. Understanding your water temperature, and then I will tell you that catching a lot of fish, if you go small and light, you will catch a lot of fish. But you're going to work it really slow. So small, light, and slow, you will catch a lot of fish. I have no qualms or no reservations about your ability. If you take a small little jig with a little bit of meat on it, whether it be a worm or whether it be power bait, and you toss it out there, and we're talking very small, very light, 1/32 of an ounce, nothing heavier than that. And you use very light line, we're talking 4-pound test. And you're going to throw it out there, and let it do its thing. It's going to float down to the bottom really slow, and in sort of a feather or a leaf type of way. It'll just float and go back and forth. And before it hits the bottom, more than likely you're going to have a fish. And be very sensitive to the bite this time of year when the water's cold. So I would definitely, go small, light, and slow this time of year as the water cools down. When you think about fly fishing, these baits, these flies are 1 or 2 grains of weight. They're nothing, and they're tiny. I mean, some of these are 32 hooks, a number 32, which is something that as a rod fisherman, a spinning reel fisherman would probably never use. There is a way of fly fishing with the spinning rod. And I do have a video on it on my YouTube channel. You're going to use a slide bobber with a barrel connector or a bobber stopper, and about 5 feet of leader with a fly on it. And you want that fly to float out there with your 2 or 4 pound test, and just let it do its thing away from the bobber. So that's what you're going to do with the fly fishing. No weight, nothing. I mean, the bobber itself is plenty enough weight. And you're just going to throw it out there and fly fish with the spinning rod. So give that a shot. I mean, I've done it successfully. So it works very, very well. And this time of year when the trout are up, it's really easy to do. And flies are very inexpensive. They're $1.50 in the store. If you like to tie flies, great. I mean, I'm enjoying it. Tying flies is a very creative, very beautiful hobby, and I understand why people do it, because you're not going to make any money from it. But this is the person who's passionate about creation. So very nice. All right, we're going to stop here on this segment, and we're going to talk about in our next segment fishing what's in the water right now, which we already talked a little bit about it, but also some of the things that are about to happen. All right, welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, everybody. So we're going to talk in this segment about what's happening now at certain lakes and waterways. Well, we have this month to continue fishing the Williamson's River. The Williamson's River is an excellent source right now. It's getting nice and cold, and the trout are flowing really well. Those red-banded trout are really good right now. I would, if you like fly fishing, go very small and work those flies up in between Waterwheel and the lake, Upper Klamath. That area right there between Waterwheel and then there's that Sportsman's Club. Those couple little bends right there work very, very well right now. Also, small jigs or even spinners. But remember, when you are fishing the Williamsons, you're only allowed a single prong hook. Cannot use trebles, okay? So a single hook, no trebles on the Williamsons. And look up the guidelines on it. The Wood River, too, is an excellent source right now. As for Lake of the Woods, the salmon are spawning, and that means the brown trout are actually jumping and up into the shallows, and they're hitting these salmon. I would go up to Lake of the Woods, check it out. In the next week or two, you're going to see hundreds of them right at the main ramp on the rocks. You can walk out there, sort of kick them aside. I mean, to be honest, there's so many of them. They're starving themselves to death, so you really aren't going to catch them. But even if you did catch a salmon right now at Lake of the Woods, it's lousy eating. Remember, use a big swim bait, and use that swim bait in the shallows, daybreak, and at nightfall. And you can troll the Rainbow Bay and actually catch a lot of really good fish. Big old giant fish. The bass are coming up and hitting them too. That means work the drop-off area. So, again, excellent fishing. And the other lakes like Hyatt's Prairie and Howard's and Hyatt's Reservoir and Howard's Prairie, go slow. Work those Ned rigs, typically green pumpkin, watermelon. Those colors work very, very well. Work them slow and on the bottom, and hopefully you'll be catching some pretty big bass. Anyway, this time of year, as the water cools down, is really more for trout and salmon. So those are cold water fish in our area. And the cold water fish are hitting very, very well right now. I would go ahead and get out there and get on some type of flotation, whether it be the water's not too cold to get in there, but I would actually use some, you want to be safe. So please, have a whistle, have a light. And then also, if you've got a wetsuit, you could probably get away with a 2-3 wetsuit right now and be very warm in the water. So if you want to wade out into the rivers, again, the rivers are doing very, very well right now. So just wade out there with some waders and just enjoy the beautiful weather that we have right now. It's really, really good. As for our equipment, and so I'm learning fly fishing. I'm making flies and doing everything I can to learn this new hobby. And flies, I have found out, you make flies because you want to, not because it's something you can make money on. Because you can go over to Sportsman's Warehouse or over Parker's Rod and Gun and actually get flies very affordably, like $1.50. Really, and I would, go over to Parker's, and Parker's actually, Dave over there, and, just ask him what's hitting and buy quite a few flies. Now, the neat thing too, and in the last segment, I sort of ended it, that you don't need to know how to fly fish in order to go fly fishing. You could use a spinning setup. And that really is a pretty good way of doing it. You can actually take a slide bobber, a water bobber. Just don't put water in it, okay? Just put that on your line and use a bobber stopper. Those things are really inexpensive and they just pop right on the line, or put a barrel connector, something to stop that bobber. And let about 4 or 5 feet of line after that and put a small little fly on it. But if you put a fly on it, when you cast it, and the bobber's plenty of weight, and it's just cast it out there and let it float, the bobber will probably move its way up the line. But even if it doesn't, you got to stop there. And the fly is going to be sitting on top of the water or start to sink. And you've got, again, a free line right there that allows you to feel every bite. So a spinning setup works very, very well for fly fishing. I know it's kind of weird. I'm learning how to fly fish, and you're thinking, Mike, if you could do it with the spinning reel, why learn how to fly fish? Well, because fly fishing it's almost like a dance that you do prior, and that's a neat thing about it. It's elegant. Fly fishing is elegant, I guess, would be a great way to do it. Say it. It works really, really well. And I learned how to cast the line. You gently lay the fly down onto the water so tenderly that it looks like a fly landing on the water. It adds to the illusion. So even though you can use a spinning setup for fly fishing, you probably do much better with a fly rod. So it's a very elegant thing to do. And when you see a fly fisherman out in the water, whipping that line back and forth and laying it down onto the water, tell me you're just not impressed. It's a picture, isn't it? It's just a picture. So it's just a great way to go fishing. And I'm looking forward to meeting other fly fishermen. So, you know, I've got a very intense interest in this hobby. It's a very cool hobby, to say the least. So this time of year, you could get away with going flies onto moving water. As for the Upper Klamath, in between Comfort Point Lodge and Rocky Point, there's a trough, deep water trough right there. Well, it's not real deep, but it's deep enough. It's like 15, 17 feet. And that's pretty deep for Upper Klamath. In that area, and over by Harriman's Resort, that area, if you hug that shoreline right there, you'll see these the trout in there. They're huge. These are like 10-pounders. Sometimes I see like 50 of them underneath me. This time of year, I'm told, is to go big and use, let's say, a Rapala up in that area. And, flies in that area are good for the spring, from what I'm told. So try a Rapala. If not, have some flies with you. And then email me and tell me how well you did. It's really an amazing sight when you're out on a kayak or a float tube or a small boat and just working that area. And it's really beautiful. So we have great weather right now, really good weather right now, unlike the East Coast. Those poor people, unlike the East Coast. But here on the West Coast, we're taking it in, aren't we? We're really doing a pretty good job. So this month, October, gives us the opportunity to catch some really big trout. But it also is the last month that we could go ahead and fish the Williamsons, unless you're indigenous. If you're part of a tribe, then you can fish that year round and do what you want with it. But us non-indigenous folks, we get to work the Williamsons only during a fishing season, and this is the last month of that fishing season on the Williamsons. And it is an absolutely beautiful, stunning, and exciting river to work. So that lower Williamsons is really what I would suggest working. And then as for the other lakes, you could do pretty good over in the valley. So they're still hitting pretty good. The water is still at a decent temperature over at Emigrants or Agate Lake. Emigrants and Agate's more, it does have bass, but more of a panfish bluegill lake. And then Emigrants is a great bass lake, good trout, but also really big crappie. And then we're going to start losing those crappie pretty soon over at Emigrant. So if you don't mind driving an hour and a half, hit them up. Also, Gerber Lake. Gerber Lake's doing very, very well right now. You could catch some great-looking panfish over there and have some great eating out of Gerber Lake right now. Head over, and if you don't mind driving 2 hours, I don't know, you can go over to Drew's Reservoir or Dog Lake. I kind of like Dog Lake. It's smaller, it's more quaint, and has some pretty big bass that's fairly easy to catch. So the dog lake, again, I would probably work a chatterbait or a jig over on Dog Lake and work it towards off bottom. That would be a really good spot right now if you don't mind driving a couple hours over to Dog Lake. I mean, if you've never been there, you can't take, I don't think it allows gas-powered engines on the lake. So you can take, it's really a for trolling motors and for kayaks and rowboats and stuff like that. Although not everybody obeys that rule. Another good lake, if you don't mind going into California, is Juanita. Juanita is a small, tiny little lake. It's about I don't know how far past, maybe 45 minutes past Doris, up in the mountains there. Look it up. Juanita Lake's a very small little lake. great for trout, great for bass, but never caught anything real big out of it, but you'll catch a bunch. I mean, one day my son and I were fishing and we weren't catching anything. I said, let's go to Juanita. So we went to Juanita, and within minutes we were catching fish. That's kind of how Juanita is. I mean, Juanita's small. It's a reservoir. It's got a dam, but it's really very tiny. Good campgrounds too. So, but it was stricken by fire. I think it was last year. Pretty bad. But Juanita is a quaint little lake, and you're not allowed motors on that lake at all, not even electric. So you're going to. It's a good kayak, rowboat, something, paddle, and just go out there. And like I said, it's so small. You won't have to worry about, getting lost on that lake. It's pretty simple. As for, other lakes like Shasta's got great water volume right now. Again, if you're going over to California, Shasta has so many points that, those bass are going to be hitting those points. They love the spotted bass, are very easy to catch. And again, Ned rigs, swimming the Ned rigs at certain depths work very, very well. It's been a while since I've been to Shasta, but I don't fish California because I don't like paying $180 for a year license. But you can get a 1 or 2 day license if you're just going down there for a day, and that's got to cost like $15. I can't remember, but it's not very much. Just go down there and hit it at all. So it's not bad. So the waters right now are slowing up when it comes to fishing because the inversion's already happened. It's already changed warm and cold. But because of that, it's the fish acclimate. Now the trout are still hitting pretty good, but they've come up. But the bass, they've gone down and they're acclimating to this new depth. And now, in order for them to eat, they got to shock themselves by coming up from the relatively warm water at the bottom of the lake and come up into the cold, eat, and then go dive back down. And that's what they're going to be doing. So they're not going to be in the shallows for very long. They come up, they get what they need, and they take it back. It's kind of like shopping. The bass are shopping right now. So anyway, stay tuned. We'll end this hour with something that I know that you're going to love. All right, welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. In this last segment, I thought I would talk about how to get on the water. I know, this is actually a pretty good time to buy boats, or anything for that matter, because it's the end of the season. And planning ahead, or even getting out there this week, which is beautiful, is really cool. So, first of all, like, some of you know by going to my YouTube channel what I own. There's a company called Sea Eagle, seaeagle.com. And their inflatables are considered one of the best on the market. And the hide on them is just extremely thick. My first Fold Cat lasted 15 years, and I sold it as good as new. Never had a hole in it, never. And it was just tough as nails. And they made some nice improvements to it, so I sold it, and I got this new model. One of the improvements was 4 air chambers instead of just 2, and a little bit more deck room with a stand-up bar, which I need. So they made some nice improvements to it. It's got the material. It's called a 1000 denier reinforced material, and it is. I just can't tell you how tough it is. It is really, really, really tough, and I would definitely recommend something like this, because I'm just addicted to it. They got lots of different packages too on their website, but just the basic boat. Let me see what they got here. $1,500, the basic boat. Although I would definitely tell you to knock out another $150 for the stand-up bar. Definitely tell you to get that. Yeah, I'll give you a couple more rod holders and stuff, but that's the one I would tell you. That's the one I bought, $16.50. And sometimes they put them on sale, but they, $16.50 for a boat is pretty darn good. And they deflate and inflate rather quickly. Like I told you originally, the first one I had a minivan, and I just stuck it in the back of the minivan. And about 15, maybe 20 minutes to get everything inflated and set up. But that's just the one I own. My goodness, they've got a lot of different. If you just want a one person, because mine's a two person, they've got one person's at about $1,000, and they got two persons and stuff. So, that's something. But that's for brand new, and I love my inflatable. I really do. If you go to Facebook Marketplace, and you just sort of type in the word fishing, you will find a lot of stuff in Facebook Marketplace. Besides one of my keychains, I've got a few more left. There's a at the moment there's a Field and Stream kayak for $200 there. There's a little aluminum boat here in town for 9-foot aluminum boat for $100. Medford's got a little kayak for $50. Somebody in town's got two, looks like Lifetime kayaks for two of them for $75. Really, you can do a pretty good job at just getting on the water really, really inexpensively. And this is just what they're asking for them. Life is a negotiation, isn't it? This is actually, Facebook Marketplace is actually a very cool place to find stuff. There's a small boat in White City for $5.50. It's even got a bimini, so you can fish in the shade. Although I have a hard time casting around biminis, but bimini's a sort of a tent on your boat, a cover, so you can fish in the shade. Boy, there's all sorts of stuff. This is a great time to look for some way to get on the water this time of year, because you can get, a boat pretty inexpensively. And then look at I'm sort of scrolling through it right now. Tons of fishing equipment. Just a ton of fishing equipment. So this is just something for you guys to sort of think about, because when you do get on the water, you actually do fish better, because you're fishing in a way that, a way that caters to a predator fish, an ambush predator. I'm drinking a little bit of coffee. I love my Black Rifle coffee. Really, it's my favorite brand. So, but I'm looking through here. You could get, pretty easily $200. You could get yourself on the water, and it's something that you can share with, split it with a sibling or mom and dad or something like that. So it's pretty simple to do. Pretty simple. Another spot I enjoy going to, probably too much according to my wife, is auction sites. So if you go to auction sites, you can sometimes get a very, very, very good deal. I like to buy stuff and then flip it. Flipping is basically buy something low and sell it high, relatively speaking, so I make a little bit of money on it, and it helps support my fishing habit besides making baits. So there's one site called Hibid, Hibid, Hibid.com. If you go to Hibid.com and just type in fishing, you'll probably be shocked Really shocked at what's there. I was really shocked. I kind of went nuts. I just went on auction just recently for an $800 fly tying vise. I know, crazy, huh? I didn't pay that much, of course, but I'll turn around and sell it because that's kind of what I do. It's like owning a Maserati or a Lamborghini. Not really your daily driver. So, but if you type in fishing, if you just need fishing tackle or fishing reels or fishing rod, a lot of these places will ship to you. And sort of take that into consideration, too. This is a great place to buy an inflatable, by the way, and get it at a fairly decent price. And because it ships cheaper than if you bought a kayak. So you might want to, or if you just want to get some, a nice rod or a nice reel, there's a ton of options on HiBid. I just typed in fishing and 72 pages showed up on auction. And some of this is antiques. And that's fine. I love refurbishing old reels. I love it. It's just fun to take something old and make it new again. And so and they sell brand new stuff too. There's a lot of reels in here that are new in the box. And you can just go ahead and go and, see what you can get. If anything appeals to you. And again, when it comes to bidding, don't bid until the last 20 minutes of it. And don't raise the price on yourself, because that's basically what you do. When you see something that is here that and it's got nobody bidding on it, or 5 people bidding on it, and you put $5 on it or $20 on it, and it goes up to $25. Well, you just raised it on yourself. So wait till the very end of the auction, and then put a maximum on what your budget is, and it will automatically bid for you up to your maximum. So they've got some full-size boats on here. We got some. Here's a 20-foot Skeeter, 225 horsepower, injection motor. At the moment, it's at $5,000, and that's too much for me. I'm a poor guy, but it ends tomorrow, so one day left, and it's only at $5,000, and it's already past its reserve amount. Here's an aluminum boat here with motor and trolling motor. So you got gas and trolling motor on it at $286, and it ends in 12 hours. And they ship. Remember, shipping is going to be expensive. So, and there's an inflatable here for $485. This is a very expensive Gary King Alaska series. It's an expensive one, but you'll be surprised. A 2-person sort of I forgot the name of that. Oh, Bass Hunters. It's a 2-person polyurethane boat for $90. So if you go onto this site, sort of take into account, you can call them and say, give me a rough estimate on shipping, and sort of put that into your budget. And all these places are usually reputable, and you can get a pretty decent, you can get a real decent deal here. So, it's a 40-pound trolling motor. It's only at 50 cents right now. You never know what you can get. You just don't know. Bidding, auction sites are pretty cool to do. Facebook Marketplace is one of those things that you're just going to, it's sort of like the new Craigslist is Facebook Marketplace. Everybody's going to post there. There are some nice groups for Klamath area, And it's just, it's where I post my stuff. I post my stuff there, and I buy stuff there, and I try to find nice garage sales and estate sales. If you can find a good estate sale, oh my gosh, always go to the garage first. Everybody's going into the house. You go to the garage because that's where the good stuff is. That's where the good stuff is. And I love estate sales are sad typically because somebody has passed away. But sometimes it's just a person who's simplifying their lives and they're just moving into something very small from very large. But I would definitely encourage you guys in order to save money. And, I think one of my broadcasts too is just ask a friend. Ask a friend who's got, who's a fisherman and has been fishing their whole life. You know what their garage looks like? Their garage looks pretty good. That's what their garage looks like. And they might just give you something. I mean, just to support your new passion. But don't, always offer them something. Always offer them something. Give them $10-20 if they don't want anything. Give them a cute, surprise them with a gift card. For their favorite coffee shop or sports store. I think gifts when they're not expected are the best gifts of all. And, I don't celebrate very many holidays, but I give gifts all the time. I love giving things to people. I just do. There is totally more joy in giving than there is in receiving. That derby we just had. I gave away about $500 worth of stuff out of, my inventory. And, of course, my time. And to see the joy and the pleasure on people's face, especially the kids. When you see that, it's worth every moment, every time. Everything all the holes I put in my fingers, putting hooks on all those things. It was worth it. Absolutely 100% worth it. And I think this is where we need, I don't know, Ken, who's not here this week, he's big on this too. I think a fisherman, when he sees people, and they're not doing too good out there, you want to help them, especially kids. You want to help kids, and I just love that. I do. I just absolutely 100% think it's the best thing in the world to do. This is a community radio station. We're a community here in Klamath Falls. And being a community, we have more respect and love for each other and for the area that we live in. So to end our hour together, please, when you go fishing or go outside to enjoy nature, clean up. Leave it better than the way you found it. So, tight lines, everybody. From me and Ken, who's not here this week, been busy with a lot of Indian stuff. We will see you out on the water.